Today we're going to talk about organizing our panel. What we learned to do was to create a panel, add all the components that we wanted to our panel, like our JLabel, text field, button, JRadio button, checkbox. We create all those, and then we add them to our panel. And before we exit, we make sure that we add our panel to our J-frame. And so our J-frame contained one panel, and that panel contained everything else on it. So this was how we learned to create our GUI so far. This is not the only way. We can actually do things differently. We can actually add something called a layout manager to set the layout for our panel so we can control how our panel is laid out. Right now, it's just laying out things next to each other. So the label and then the text field and then the button. And if there's room on one line, it puts them all on one line. If there isn't, it goes to the next line. But what we want to do is set a layout. And there are several layouts that are available in Java that we can choose from. So our goal is to set a layout for our panel, for our J-frame actually. And then we are going to actually add the components directly to our J-frame. We are not going to need this panel. We can use it if you want to, but we don't have to. So this is our goal. Now, one thing we can also do, instead of using the set size, is use a pack method. And what the pack method does, it packs everything next to each other and makes it visible. Now let's look at some managers that are available for us. Okay, so there's the flow layout, box layout, border layout, grid layout. This is kind of an overview of how things work. So with the flow layout, it just starts putting things next to each other. And, you know, if there's no more space on a line, it puts them on the next line. The box layout has two options, like a vertical where it just puts everything underneath each other. Box layout horizontal makes everything next to each other. There is, somehow it's not showing, the border layout, which shows you like regions, north, south, east, west, center. There's a grid layout, and there is one that's called grid bag layout, which I'm not going to cover. But those are all ones that we're going to look at and see how we can use them. Now, when we're dealing with layout managers, we just want to remember that whether we're talking about a J-frame or a J-panel or any of those other boxes that we're using, like the text box, the label, J-option pane, all these that we're using, buttons, all of them eventually extend from container. So all those methods that we are going to be using are actually available on container. So those layout managers are available on container, and that's why we can apply them to the J-frame, the J-panel, and everything else. So what we're going to do is we can change actually the layout of everything. We can change the layout of a J-frame just by calling the set layout, but we could also do it on a panel. So if we wanted to create a panel within our J-frame that has a certain layout, we could do that too. So just keep that in mind, that we can either set the layout for the whole J-frame or for the panel. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first layout, which is the flow layout. And let me just show you the pack versus, so right now, let's just remember how our window looked from before. It had everything like this. You know, let's see what happens if I change the size. So right now, the size is set to 350. Let's make it 750. And when I do that, I find that more things now are starting to be put on the same line. Why? Because the default behavior for my J panel is the flow layout. So as long as there is room on one line, it's going to keep adding. And if I make this line even longer, it's going to fit more things on it. So this is the default behavior, which is the flow layout. Now, what if I don't want to create a panel? So instead of creating a panel, so I'm just going to take this panel code out. And at the end, instead of adding things to the panel, I'm going to actually add them. So let's actually take out the J panel from here so that we don't mess up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add everything to the J frame itself. So instead of adding things to the panel, I'm going to add them to the J-frame. And so this is going to go away for now. Just remove all that. So now what I'm doing is I'm just calling the add method, which is on the J-frame because my window extends from J-frame. And I've added everything to the J-frame. Will this work? Oops, we need to remove the code that does the panel. So let's just remove the checkbox handler, this one. So for now, we're just going to comment out this code. And we find that the only thing that's there is the last one that we put, the change background color to yellow. So this is not going to work because we are not using a panel. So if I want it to work and actually, show me something, I have to make sure I set a layout. If I don't set a layout, it doesn't work. So I'm going to go and I'm going to set the layout to the new flow layout. So let's go to my panel. And let's put it up here. Set layout, new flow layout. Okay. And now I see that my items started showing up again, but again, they are just lined up one after the other. Okay. Instead of doing the set size also, what I can do is say pack. So this was what I was referring to over here on the slide. So I can use the pack instead of the set size to pack things. And what this is going to do, it's going to calculate the appropriate size it feels it needs for my window. Okay. So instead of set size, I'm going to just say pack. And we're going to see that it chooses the appropriate size. Oh no, what happened? Where did it go? Sorry, it needs to be after the build panel. So because the build panel is the one that actually builds the panel, so after I've built it and put all my items in, then I need to pack it. Because it's going to base the calculation of the size on the panel. And so it packed it and it was able to put everything on one line for me. So this is another way that we can do it. Instead of setting a size, you can use the pack. And let me just put a comment for you here. Pack must be called after you created your panel and must be before set visible. Okay, so you really have to put it in this place between the building the panel and setting the visible. Okay, so this is what the flow layout looks like. It just puts things next to each other. That's all the flow layout does for you. Puts things next to each other. Now, this flow layout, you can do some extra customization. So when you're constructing this flow layout option, so the set layout here, I actually created a new object. So this is creating a new object. You can see, you can say how you want things to be justified. You want them just left, center justified, right justified. So we can change the customization, the alignment by choosing how we want it to be aligned. So let's use right now we're actually not going to be able to see it. So here, if I do flow layout, let's say right, actually we're not going to be able to see it because we used pack. So pack is just packing everything, so it's not letting us see. So I'm going to go back to the set size so that I can actually control what it looks like. Okay, so let's go back to the set size and let's make it back to, let's say 550. Okay, so right now, because I made it right justified, everything is justified to the right. Okay, if I change this to be center, then everything is going to be aligned to the center. So that's one thing you can control, how you're aligning your components on your frame. Another thing that you can choose is the gap that you want to leave, the horizontal gap and the vertical gap. So here for this one, what I did was I did 5 pixels between everything. And so the gap between everything is 5. Now here what I did was I set the horizontal to be 10. So you can see that the distance between my components is starting to be a little bit bigger. And I made the vertical 30. So let's just play with it. Let's come here and make the gap 20, the horizontal 20, and let's make the vertical 40. And so I see now that the distances are starting to be bigger, and the distance here is also bigger. Now my size is not big enough, so I need to make it a little bigger so I can see everything. Okay. So I would need to make my size bigger. But here you can control like the spacing between everything. Okay. So this is just the flow layout. Another layout that you can use is called the border layout. Now, when you do the border layout, you have to kind of decide how your GUI is going to look, and you divide your GUI page into 5 regions. You have like a north region, a south region, a west, an east, and a center region. And what we do is we set the layout to the new border layout. We create a new border layout and set the layout to that. And then when we're adding components to the page, we say where we want it to be put. Do you want it in the north, the south, the east, the west, or the center? Now, there is a limitation, which is that each region can only have 1 component in it. So what if I want to do more than one thing? Let's say here I wanted, the add here, subtract here, multiply here, and I wanted the first number, the label, the text field, the label and the text field to be in the center. What would I do in that case? Well, what I would do in that case is I would create a J panel, add those 4 items to it, and then add that J panel to the frame to the center. So when we're using the border layout, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 regions. So we can add 5 components. Now, those components can be also J panels, and each J panel we learned can contain more than 1 component. So let's go to our GUI and look at it and kind of think how we want to do it. I'm just going to take out, let's take those numbers out. Let's just bring them back to, let's see, 5 and 10 so that we can see everything. Okay, so maybe I might want to put my checkboxes, let's say in the south, okay, and my 2 numbers in the middle. And really, the buttons, putting them on the right, left, and north is not really good. But maybe let's add a label to the beginning that says what we're going to do, like the converter. So let's think how we're going to do it. So let's add, first of all, let's add label, let's say instructions equal to new J label. And then here, enter 2 numbers and select what you and select operation. Let's just do that. So here, instead of doing the flow layout, I'm going to do the border layout. I'm going to say set layout to new border layout. And let's have those instructions. So let me go to where I'm adding things. I'm going to add my instructions. And I'm going to add it to border layout dot north. Okay, so this is my north, and let's say those checkboxes are going to be in the south. So let me create a J panel, call it south, for example, equal new J panel, and south we're going to add the box 1. Oops. And south dot add box 2, and then I'm going to add south to border layout dot south. Now I only added the north and the south right now. So if I look at my, oops, what's wrong? Let's see what's wrong. Instructions is misspelled. Try one more time. So right now, all I have is my enter two numbers in the north, and I have my south. I didn't add anything in the east, west, or middle part. Now I'm not going to do it all, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my number and label. So that number and label, I'm going to put it in the east, and I'm going to put the number and the text field in the west. So let me go and do that. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to again create a J panel for, let's call it the east, new J panel. And this is not the most beautiful design, I know that, but it's just to demo how we do use these different layouts. Okay, so I added both of these to the east, and I'm going to go to the east and add it at BorderLayout.east. Oops. I'm just going to copy this to the west part. So this is the west. I'm going to add both of them to the west. And we're going to have to add, oops, let's do it up here, to the border layout west part. So now we're going to have things in the east and in the west. Let's make it a little bigger. Okay, so if we make it a little bigger, we kind of see that the middle part, the center part is empty. Okay, I'm going to stop now giving with this example, but you get the idea of how to change the border layout. Okay. Now with the border layout, you can also choose the horizontal gap and the vertical gap. We saw that we can nest components in a layer. So if you need to create a J panel for any reason, you can also do that. So those were two layouts that we just saw, the flow layout and the border layout.